Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Higurashi, Chapter 6. And while we're technically done with the game, we still have the staff thing, and we're gonna rewatch one of the short, the tips. And I'm gonna talk about some theories, since Leo says this, in at least what he claims is this is the last chance to really guess anything. So that is what I'm gonna do a little bit before we start actual chapter 7. So first, let's get the staff thing. So again, it seems no fourth wall breaking event going on again. I think that was supposed to have win. Because, I mean, it says if suicide is considered defeat, you'd want to consider mortal nothing. I'm assuming they meant to put win now. Whoops. I'm starting to think I realize why we never got the console version. Because I read an article about people who want the console version localized, but they basically said there's so much new shit put into it that they wouldn't even, like, people who are like, just take the PC script and just dump it in and then, you know, kind of spread and stretch as needed, but they're like, there's so much new shit like that wouldn't work. Yeah, this is kind of an interesting little metaphor on this whole thing. He must be a very poor whittle. I mean, when you really think about it, that kind of was the point of Chapter 6 when you really think about it. To trust people around you. To talk to them about your problems. I mean, you could even say that's a little bit of what Chapter 3 was about, too. Hey, Jack, how you doing? Welcome back to the chat of tomorrow. Yeah, that's an interesting takeaway from Chapter 6, though. I mean, that really, when you think about it, that is the kind of overlying message of it, really. So anyway, we're gonna rewatch a tip since the game fucked up and like showed us tips we weren't actually supposed to have when I saw them, so it was kind of weird. So we did technically finish Chapter 6, and we have seen this, but we're gonna rewatch this because we watched at a point we weren't supposed to see it. Hey, Jess, how you doing? You looking forward to the special guest today? So let's see. I think he said this was 20 years in the future. I mean, there are obviously psychopaths to that, but obviously the game's talking about, like, when you look at everyone's situation, like, everyone had a root cause that caused issues when things started getting weird. Yeah, I'm, like, when it's hot, I'm air conditioning, bro. I like nature and that, but I also don't like dying in the heat, so... Like, if it's raining or something, I don't usually mind as much, as long as it's not coming through the window, the rain. Oh, is there a problem for today? I hope that's not a problem. I'd hate to have to re-communicate a whole new thing. Is that gonna be okay, man? "20 years ago." It's interesting how he's involved with the case still. I mean, they did say they were gonna try and solve this shit. Jess's silence has me a little concerned. Oh, okay. Because I chose the time to try and walk with Lux and the guest, and I think it'll make a interesting critique night with our guest. Yeah, sadly, our companion in justice isn't here. See, I thought he was going to have an interesting role in Chapter 6, but he ended up not really doing anything until now. So I wonder if the medical checkups anything useful. It is interesting that, it's 20 years after this town was just destroyed, and he's still actually trying to solve this shit. And we saw that in Chapter 5's conclusion, where they decided that they were going to try and figure out what happened. But yeah, 20 years later, they can finally go into the city. See, he was all the way pretty old. So I imagine he's really fucking old now. I mean, I don't think we ever learned his actual age in the story, but I mean, when you look at him, I mean, you would think maybe at best he's in his 40s. Probably at best, so yeah. I mean, 20 years later, I mean, even at 40, he'd be pretty old. See, now, we didn't fully realize it, but the scrapbook he has right now is the one that was the main focus of Chapter 6. And we did learn something very interesting in this tip from that. Now, I want to pay a little closer attention to this, because I'm wondering if it'll be a pawn. See, that's what they claim. But it's so weird. You know, when you think about, ironically, if they had built the dam and everything, all these people would have actually been fine. That's kind of like the irony when you think about it, actually. I don't know about that part. There's still so much strange about what happens in this game. I don't know if this is a real incident. I'm going to assume it is. That's an interesting question. Because the scrapbook was the only thing that had the alien thing. So why would 20 years later would it start? That is quite odd. we pretty much know all this bit so far. But that doesn't really make sense. Why would the alien try to help people and then like, hey, you know what? Like, such tall tales, right? Men in Black. It was literally the next day. Hmm. But then what killed everyone? That is interesting. Hmm. Well, wouldn't they have found such a thing, though? Hmm. Hmm. These are all true things we know of. Someone predicted. Took the hostage. Like, why would the doctor commit suicide by sleeping pills? Like, could it be possible Coach actually knew something? Could it be possible Coach killed the priest? I mean, he truly treasured the kids. Of course, he was more with the orphan than the priest, but... Could he have somehow killed her? And then committed suicide after? But what would lead him to do that? Would be a question. I mean, for him... If we take the staff meeting as a suggestion, when faced with a difficult situation, thinking about murder or suicide, what would cause the doctor want to be removed from the situation by causing suicide? Well, I mean, to be fair, if you knew there was going to be a giant death cloud of death coming and you weren't going to be able to escape it, I mean, that would make sense, but why would the doctor know about that? It's probably exactly why the game brings up the possibility that he could have been involved in such an experiment. That's an interesting theory, too. See, I'm gonna save that for my theory portion of this particular video. I'll say that. Indeed. What did happen? Okay. So I don't know if Leo joined up with that. I did tell Leo that I was going to do a little theory crafting before we head off to the Chapter 7. So, I'm going to list off possible theories of what's going on, and if anyone we've met might be potential culprits. Some of these are outlandishly weird, because, I mean, to be fair, the game has been outlandishly weird, so... let's just get the bag out. Who do I think is the most suspect person out of every cast character that we met? Who do I suspect the most? This is a long shot. A very, very big long shot. But after considering many of the things that have happened, thinking about what's true or false, because Chapter 6 introduced the theory that much of the information we know is questionable. Each of the characters who experienced paranorma, being paranoid, or misinforming narrators, we can't trust everything they experienced. And thus, it becomes difficult to know what is believable scenarios and what was truly paranoia. So the most important thing in that aspect comes down to the fact that what things did multiple people acknowledge, and not just the main character of said scenario who experienced the paranorma. So like in Chapter 1 through 3, we can't trust the OG MC. Chapter 4, I don't think we have to really worry about paranoia, because it didn't really feel like anyone was experiencing it, really. Then Chapter 5, of course, we played as the twin sister, which you could argue experienced the paranoia in 2 as well, since she would have been the one murdering people. So the OGMC and the twin sister both experienced the paranoia problem in 2 and 5. Then in Chapter 6, we were hopping around to so many people's perspectives, more than any time in any of the chapters. It's arguable whether everyone we've looked at was experiencing paranoia, or just a few people. It's something I greatly put a lot of thought into, like which narrators during Chapter 6 were trustworthy to conceal from to ones who obviously we couldn't. And based on much of my thought, I came to one thing that I truly found suspicious that was never deflected. The game... how should I put it? The game didn't put a lot into it, but it did throw it out there, and the game's characters did say that, they just thought it was a mistake. But nothing in the game ever justified that, other than the characters' own opinions, and I found that suspect. So, I'm going to say it. My number one suspect out of all the human cast members, because I do have some theories that are also non-human cast members, but out of all the human cast members, my number one suspect is the Norse. on the grounds that she died 24 hours before the festival, and nothing disproved that. The Kyotos only tossed it aside because it didn't make sense. But a similar thing happened in Chapter 2, and Chapter 5 explained a good chunk of that. Hey, Dan. So I'm making my number one suspect of being somehow involved in all this the Norse. I feel like there was something greatly mysterious about her. She predicted much of the tragedy, even though much of her scrapbooks were insanity. And the fact that nothing disproved that she died 24 hours before the last time she was actually seen, other than the Kyoto's hand-waving it. The game has made consistent confusing arguments and discussion about much information. It seemed really odd to me that the game hardly put time into it, just saying, oh, well, they must have made a mistake. But what if they didn't make a mistake? We didn't get to see any factual information that disproves that there was a mistake made in her time of death. If it's not a mistake, there was truly something obviously disturbing about the fact that somehow she was found dead before she was at the festival, witnessed and talked to, along with breaking into the shrine warehouse. Or storehouse. There was something very peculiar about all that. She might not necessarily be the main thing, possibly. Which I think is another thing to keep in mind with all this. Hey! Thank you for the subscription, Dan, with Prom. Thank you. Thank you very much. But yeah, I consider it really odd. And I'm also wanting to put out that it is possible that there could be more like a minion kind of system going here. Like somebody is behind a lot of the actions, but then maybe there was an unknown person truly being the mastermind kind of thing. And that could also be a possibility. But I think the Norse is probably the most likely to possibly have some involvement. Now, of course, I can't forget the fact that Coach mysteriously commits suicide, and that's hard to overlook. Chapter 6 and Chapter 5 are both stories that showed, well, 2, 5, and 6 are both stories that showed how many misunderstandings led to much tragedies. Many people were harmed and killed and psychologically scarred from misunderstandings during the events of each chapter. To the point where people died. I mean, that was like basically the whole point of them recapping Chapter 1, really, was this. Your paranoia overcame you, and for some reason you thought people were trying to murder you when they weren't, and you killed people. So I don't really know if the Doctor truly is a big suspect, but it is hard to ignore the fact Coach kills himself in 3 timelines that we know he commits suicide, if not in all of them. It's very concerning. But it could be a red herring, or it could be some kind of admission of guilt. The staff meeting itself literally both touched upon the possibility of why a person would consider murder or suicide, wanting to get away from a situation. Suicide being the self-harm way, and murder being the get rid of the problem from the situation. So if we follow that logic, then Coach was trying to get away from something. It could have been the disaster itself. He somehow could have known about it and been possibly involved in it. So, as much as I don't really think Coach is likely, it's kind of hard to avoid putting Coach on the suspect list because You never know. I mean, I thought the twin sister wasn't even remotely pure evil, but fuck, playing Chapter 5, I don't really, like, I think Chapter 5's big point was to make you mistrust basically everyone. Like, if you didn't grasp the possibility of them swapping and all that shit, like, it's so fucked up. Like, it gives you a completely new image of the character, and it is just sad. So, I do have Coach on my suspect list, but he's probably in the lower end. But not impossible to be greatly involved. Bizarre theories. Now, I did throw out, though, that I have wondered about if the Higurashi themselves, the chirping bugs, may have some involvement. It would be interesting, because obviously their presence is basically always around. The game's named after them. They'll, how should I say, subtly referred to sometimes in both moments of great and horror about their cry towards events of good and negative that happen throughout the story. Now, there isn't really anything at all to really go with the Higurashi theory that the insects themselves are somehow causing it. But hey, you know, we've always seen really bizarro, like, way more bizarro fucking shit as, like, the theories in this, so I'm not necessarily throwing it out. It would be a pull the rug under you kind of moment if that involved. Now, this is a spoiler for Big O. So I want to announce it. It's going to be a spoiler for Big O, but it's something that the tip even went over, and it's something I mentioned during the chapter, the final chapter of this chapter. So, you got your spoiler warning now. So, the Big O theory. Now, if you've ever watched Big O, both seasons, the original and then the season that was created because of the popularity in America. Fun fact, Big O had no ending in Japan, and when it was localized in America, it actually was pretty popular to the point where they decided to actually finish the storyline. The more you know! Anyway, the Big O theory. So, if you watched the later half of Big O, you find out that Big O is basically a giant stage play. All the characters are given a role to be in a script. Like, everything that's happening is a script being reacted. Everything that happens to the characters and stuff. So it's like a big, like, fourth wall breaking kind of thing of the characters basically realizing their fiction. Maybe kind of like similar to another game. Anyway, we're not getting into that game, though. I don't even want to subtly hint that one. Anyway, you know, if you know, you know. Anyway, so, the Big O theory. So, the detective from Chapter 4 basically subtly threw that idea out. Did someone see the scrapbook and decide to somehow cause a portion of it to become true? Is this a Big O situation? Well, there's portions of these stories becoming true, they're being real. No, I'm not telling you that. That ruins the whole fucking game. That's why I decided to use Big O for the example. Well, I can tell you on Discord if you want. Anyway, I mean, if you really want to know, I'll tell you on Discord. Anyway, so, so do I have any other possible culprits? Now, of course, it's completely impossible to deny that the priest girl is very sus in weird ways. Now, is she behind everything? I don't really think so. It seems very clear to me she's a victim. But her actions are still very confusing and odd. I have said before that it seems odd that she would just let the events continue playing out over and over. Now, Chapter 6 kind of addressed that a little bit to her basically being tired of failing. And that's not necessarily a completely understandable situation. I feel like Chapter 7 will probably address more in that, assuming we retain any kind of memory. But there is obviously something very suspicious about how she is in regards to a lot of this. Is she conscious? Like, the questions I have to ask in regards to her is she conscious about basically the multiple lives all the time? Is there a moment where she awakens to these memories, similar to how the MC was? Like, those are the kind of questions I have in regards to this. Because, like, it's not impossible to make the story somehow still involve her, if that makes sense. Like, it's not impossible. But it's debatable. So it's kind of impossible to also completely remove her from the suspect list. If she has anything to do with it, it's probably to an accidental to a minor kind of role. Like, if she has anything to do with it, like back when I said that, you know, it's possible that the person will catching red-handed could be more of a minion and there'll be a bigger unknown entity revealed. And if the little priest girl happened to be in that position, I would say that would be the more likely scenario of having some kind of secretive mastermind above them that we find out later. Like somehow maybe she tripped into this whole problem and just been stuck in it since. You know what would also be interesting? And this is kind of a spin-off idea to the Big O theory. It would be interesting. So, during the interaction between the Yakuza and the police, they look through several other of her scrapbooks, and they're like, each one's like a completely kind of different idea based on different theories and stuff. It would be weird if, say, like, every scenario, like each of the chapters, 1 to 6 here, if each one was based off a different scrapbook. Like chapter 6 was scrapbook, what do they call it? File 34? But say chapter 1 is another scrapbook, and so on and so forth. Like, that would be a bizarro Big O kind of theory. Like, somehow each scrapbook, a different one became true and caught, like, chapter 3, someone goes to murder the uncle and shit. But I think in the more important aspect of her is to understand why is she being murdered. It's probably safe to assume that every version of this world, she dies, whether it tells us or not. I think it's told us about half the times of her dying. But it's safe to assume she probably dies in all of them, no matter what. Just the ways are different. But the question is why? She's considered to be a religious figure who is the reincarnation of the god. So it's really hard to imagine anyone who believes in that religion to harm her unless they felt like it was going to resurrect them into godhood or something. Now, if I never quickly in chapter 3, we found her dead, and then the disaster happened. She was dead at the shrine in a trash bag, chopped up. Now, in chapter 6 here, they said she died on the night of the school hostage situation. So, it was in the middle of the night. Well, in chapter 3, well, I guess... Well, no, not chapter... Yeah, chapter 3. Yeah, because chapter 2 and 5 are the whole thing with it. At the chapter 5, it was in broad daylight, and, you know, we were at the shrine with the orphan girl in it. You know, thinking back, you know, they were outside the hospital back in chapter 3. Before, like, the whole argumentative thing happened on the bridge, and then she pushed you off to what we thought was going to be her death, and she didn't die. I mean, he didn't die. It's kind of interesting to think about the fact that they didn't go into the hospital. I wonder if it's possible that Coach might have been dead before that happened. Because that was one of the timelines where we were told Coach committed suicide. Was, and hey, Pad, how you doing today? Good morning. That was one of the timelines where we were told that Coach committed suicide. I believe it was the first time. Yes. Well, Twitch has a lot of listings. You have the original, which is all of them. And then you have the newer version, which is what I'm playing at the moment. Well, they're all chopped up in the chapters, which, yeah, is weird. But I mean, that's the thing I don't get. Why were they chopped up in the chapters if they were originally one whole game? Like, that's what Carter says, is that the original game was 1 through 8. So I don't understand why they chopped it up in this newer version. I don't know. But why was the preschool murdered? Why did Coach want to remove himself from the situation? Was it guilt for doing something horrible? Or was it to avoid the disaster? He's a doctor, so it's hard to imagine him accidentally overdosing on sleeping pills. It's really hard to imagine him doing that. Otherwise, I couldn't really think of any crazy theories to go on. I mean, I know we could point to the Yakuza and shit, but like at this point, I don't feel like the three families in that have anything directly to do with it. But who knows? They could. But I think those are my suspicions. I think those are my things. So it's hard to really say if I'm anywhere close to an accurate hit or not. But I tried to think pretty long and hard about the overarching story to this point. About what's going on. What things are trustworthy in that. And what things should remain sus. What things truly suspect. And you know, another thing, going back to the Norse theory, another thing to also keep in mind with the Norse that's also bizarre was the whole awkward night of running into her on the night that the OG MC killed the uncle. Because remember, like, on his grand, like, getting away from the fucking scene of the crime and shit, he bumped into her and stuff. And it was a really awkward exchange. And thinking about when Nembo, she kept very, very, very restating that, you know, after she dropped him off, the two of them never saw each other. What if somehow that's actually a pawn towards the 24-hour thing when you think about it? Because obviously, if okay, who? Let's go on the mindset that the theory that she was indeed dead 24 hours before the festival, and she was at the festival anyway. And let's say the person at the festival is aware of this. If that person was aware of the fact that the Norse was dead 24 hours prior to everything they were doing at that time, or some amount of hours, 20 hours or whatever, I guess if you're getting subjective, but that meant the person took a huge risk in being seen, but they didn't leave the MC high and dry. So that's interesting if you went on that mindset. Because on one hand, you would think it would be more important to not be seen for the rest of the day. But then again, they were always seen at the festival, which was all the way, past the time of death. So I guess did really actually matter when you think about it. Because then they wouldn't just gone to the festival. And also another interesting thing to think about. As far as we are aware, she's never heard the footsteps. The MC, the twin, and the camera guy have all heard the footsteps. But there was never one time where she ever talked about hearing footsteps before. The more I'm thinking about it, there was even more things that are actually kind of suspectedly odd, actually. But yeah, that night in Chapter 3, she very, very, very multiple times kept telling us that neither of the two of them, she didn't see him and he didn't see her. And I don't think the MC ever actually ever admitted to it, actually. So, that does add a little bit extra suspicion on that Norse. Anyway, those are my, what I think is suspect going into the next chapter. Leo says that, to recap for those who join, Pad and that, Leo claims this is the last moment to really figure out the mystery. So, shut up, Dan. Anyway, so I wanted. That's why we finished the staff thing, and we watched the final tip that takes place 20 years after Chapter 6's timeline. Anyway, though, I wanted to get my guesses and theories and opinions on, because there's nothing fun in a murder mystery, in my opinion, than the gotcha. Hey, this is my theory crafting time. This is my time to shine your shine. Did I just reference that? Anyway, with theories out there on that's what I'm going into Chapter 7 with. Will I be right? Will I be wrong? I don't know. Hopefully Leo got to hear my theories. He hasn't said a single thing. A proving ground theory. Thank you for canceling MatPat. Till next time. Also, it's kind of weird to bring that up, actually, Oh, hey, Leo. Oh, no, you're fine, I just, Dan was just about to ask me about the new MatPat theory. The I'm gone theory. Anyway, no, you're fine, Leo, it's just, I didn't, you seemed really interested in, my wanting to... Honestly, it's so sad, and, with regards to MatPat, I liked it as early content. It felt like he actually genuinely was trying to do, real theories, well, mid to now was all based on popularity, algorithm. Like, there's a lot. Like, hell, fuck this game. Like, imagine the kind of shit MatPat could have made theories about this fucking game. Well, you just said you did. So didn't you hear? Didn't you hear my suspect list? Do I have to redo all that? I mean, I just talked for like 30 minutes, man. Well, I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched a little bit of it. But, it's funny how you say how far he fell, yet how incredibly rich and well off he is from it. I gave a list of my guilty people that I feel like have, at minimum, something to do with it, and at most could potentially be wildly a part of it. My top suspect is the Norse. I feel like there's too many sussy, strange things around, or... Coach's suicide, I feel like, is more likely a red herring, but Coach could have some kind of involvement to some capacity. The Big O theory and Higurashi are two out there theories. Well, the sad thing is, that's how you get there easy. Getting there the non-sellout way is hard. And it's not that people haven't, it's just, it's hard. I mean, I can't disagree with being a sellout is how you get up there quick and more successfully than putting a lot of heart and passion. Though, you know, every time he said, like, his old content was shit, I don't know, it really fucking hurt me. I feel like it's such a shitty way to basically tell your old fans they're pieces of shit for liking your old stuff. I mean, it's one thing to say, like, oh, well, you know, the editing wasn't as good, or, you know, I feel like I'm more confident or something, but just basically saying all those theories were shit and stuff just feels so sad, because it feels like a lot of times those theories were more actually based on wanting to be real theories versus just following trends and Five Nights at Freddy's. Most likely. That's really hard. I wanted to, like, at least come up with a list of, like, 5 people. But I feel like the Norse has the most potential of being something. Just saying. Sadly, that's how business is sometimes. Sometimes business people, to be quickly successful, sell their souls. It's just the sad reality of life sometimes. Anyway, though. I think the Norse is most suspect. Like, the most mysterious things still, human-wise, is the Norse, Coach's suicide, and the priest girl. Like I said, with the priest girl, I don't really think she's likely guilty, because it kind of doesn't make sense for her to be at least totally guilty. She could have something to do with it as more of a accidental, or maybe even a regret. So, like, it's not impossible to create a scenario where she's greatly involved. It's just, at worst, it's something she at one point may have done on purpose, but then regretted after hundreds of years of it happening over and over again. And at best, was a horrible accident. Yeah, I mean, like, it. Honestly, every time he always shat on his old videos. I mean, there was one time he addressed people who liked his old videos that was just... I mean, I don't think very highly of my old videos, to be fair, either. But, you know, if you like them, you like them, you know? Like, obviously, somebody liked that stuff. And definitely my old videos had some very horrible quality, because some of the first things I used to do video capture were very horrible quality devices. But, and obviously everyone's going to have their own opinions what videos are good and bad and shit. It feels like his older videos that had more dignity and him shitting on them feels really bad to me, because I feel like they were more dignified versus how he feels like he follows trends and stuff. Because, I mean, there's a lot of games I've played that would have been great for theory crafting. Like, just think about all the in-universe theory crafting he could have done on, like, what was that Vita game? Soul, what was it? What was the other part of it? I said Vita, not PS3, 4, FYI. It was that game Pad voted up. Soul Sacrifice, that's what it was. Soul Sacrifice. Imagine a lot of people's videos were that in the old time. Because that... Anyway, but, Soul Sacrifice as a time universe could have been, like, shitloads of theory crafting. I mean, there's so many great games that have a lot of potential for theories, but would MatPat always follow the popular trend? Fortnite and FNAF and anything Undertale, Deltarune, and any other big indie games? Like, how many small, interesting games that have a lot of potential for theory crafting did he cover? Virtually none. That's the correct answer. Virtually none. Like, usually when it wasn't any of that stuff, it would be Nintendo. Like, he went with what made money, and I mean, on one hand, I get, you know, like, he has, like, at that point, he had a family and a child and shit, and, you know, he does gotta keep bread and butter on the table. But, like, I don't know. I feel like, you know, you could have done a video once in a while on something like this. But anyway, we got too much into, like, a whole MatPat rant thing anyway. Yeah. Well, at this point, it's hard to deny.